I woke on my 35th birthday and reached for my phone like I always did. It was a reflex by now, that small, hopeful motion in the first seconds of consciousness. Maybe this year, maybe she remembered. The screen lit up and I saw one notification, one text message from Mom. My heart did a foolish little jump, the kind I should have trained out of myself decades ago. I opened it. The message read, "Hannah, can you call the florist on 5th Street today? I need to confirm the peony arrangement for Lily's party next Saturday. They need verbal confirmation. Thanks, honey." I read it twice. Then a third time, just to make sure I was not dreaming. My mother had texted me on my 35th birthday, not to wish me well, not to say she loved me, but to ask me to help plan my sister's birthday party. Lily's party was next week, mine was today. And somehow, in my mother's mind, those two facts existed in completely separate universes. I set the phone down on the nightstand. I did not cry. I had stopped crying over forgotten birthdays somewhere around 25. I did not call my mother to remind her, the way I used to when I still believed reminders would change anything. Instead, I got out of bed, took a shower, put on jeans and a nice blouse, and grabbed my keys. I had somewhere to be. I had an appointment I had been waiting 3 years to keep. That morning, I did not ask my mother to see me. I decided to see myself. The drive to Bend took 3 hours. I took the highway north out of Portland, watching the landscape shift from city to suburbs to farmland to forest. The mountains appeared on the horizon, still capped with snow even in May. I did not turn on the radio. I drove in silence, letting my thoughts unspool like thread from a spindle. 3 years. That is how long I had been planning this. Every overtime shift I volunteered for. Every bonus I deposited straight into savings instead of spending on vacations or clothes or any of the small luxuries that other women my age seemed to enjoy. Every Friday night, I stayed home instead of going out. All of it had been building toward this moment. No one knew, not my mother Diane, not my sister Lily, not even my closest friends, though I did not have many of those left. I had learned a long time ago to keep my dreams private. Sharing them meant watching them get forgotten or overshadowed or dismissed. So I kept this one locked inside my chest like a secret jewel, polishing it in the dark, waiting for the day I could finally hold it up to the light. The real estate agent's name was Patricia. She was waiting for me at a coffee shop on the main street of Bend, a small mountain town about 180 miles from Portland. We had been emailing for 6 months. She did not know it was my birthday. She only knew I was ready to close. As I drove, I felt something unfamiliar rising in my chest. It was not anger. It was not sadness. It was something quieter and more powerful. The feeling of a decision that belonged only to me. A door I was about to walk through that no one could lock behind me. Bend was everything I had hoped it would be. Mountains in the distance, pine trees lining the streets, a lake that caught the afternoon sunlight and turned it into diamonds. I parked in front of the coffee shop and saw Patricia through the window, waving at me with a manila folder in her hand. I waved back and stepped inside to meet my future. The title company was a small office on the 2nd floor of a brick building downtown. Patricia and I sat across from a woman named Deborah who walked me through the paperwork page by page. I signed my name more times than I could count. My hand started to cramp somewhere around the 15th signature, but I did not care. Every stroke of the pen was a declaration. I thought about all the birthdays that had brought me to this moment. The 8th birthday when my mother forgot to send the invitations. The 16th when I ate 3-day-old lasagna alone in the kitchen. The 18th when I gave my graduation speech and saw my mother texting in the back row. Every holiday I spent as the helper, the organizer, the one who cleaned up while everyone else relaxed. Every moment I had been overlooked, dismissed, treated as the capable one who did not need attention or care. The final document was the settlement statement. At the bottom was the number, $147,000. Every cent I had saved, plus the money from my father's trust fund, the one my mother and sister still knew nothing about. I handed over the cashier's check and watched Deborah verify it with the bank. Then she slid the keys across the table. They were cold and heavy in my palm. 2 keys on a simple ring. The keys to a house. My house. A 3-bedroom craftsman on a small lake, with a fireplace and a dock and a view of the mountains. Mine. For 35 years, I had been waiting for someone to give me permission to matter. In that moment, I realized I had been asking the wrong person all along. Patricia drove me to the house so I could see it one more time before she headed back to her office. I walked through the empty rooms slowly, touching the walls, opening cabinets, standing in doorways. The afternoon light poured through the windows and pooled on the hardwood floors. I could hear birds singing outside. The lake was visible through the back windows, calm and silver. I walked down to the dock. The wood creaked under my feet. I stood at the edge, looking out at the water, and took my phone from my pocket. I opened the camera and positioned the keys in my palm, the lake shimmering in the background. I took the photo. Then I opened Facebook and Instagram and typed a caption. 4 words. Birthday gift. Self-gift. I posted it to every platform where my family and their extended network would see it. Then I did something I had never done before. I powered off my phone completely, not silent, not airplane mode. Off. I knew exactly what was happening on the other side of that black screen. My mother's phone was buzzing with notifications. People were commenting, asking questions. Someone was probably calling her right now, asking if she knew her daughter had just bought a house. And she would have to admit that she did not know. That she had no idea. That she had been so busy planning Lily's birthday party that she had forgotten mine entirely. I did not post that photo to hurt my mother. I posted it because for once I wanted to celebrate myself out loud. If that made her uncomfortable, that was her problem to solve, not mine. The sun began to set over the lake. I sat on my dock with my feet dangling over the water, watching the sky turn orange and pink and purple. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who checked her phone every birthday morning with desperate hope. The one who had learned to shrink herself so small that she became invisible. The one who believed that if she just asked for less, eventually someone would give her more. That woman was still inside me. But she was not in charge anymore. It has been said that you cannot pour from an empty cup. But I think it is worse than that. I think some of us were never given a cup to begin with. We were just expected to keep pouring, to keep giving, to keep showing up for people who never showed up for us. I stayed on that dock until the stars came out. Then I walked back to my house and stepped inside for the first time as its owner. The rooms were dark and empty, but they did not feel lonely. They felt like possibility. But before I tell you what happened when I finally turned my phone back on, before I tell you about the 23 missed calls and the accusations and the tears, you need to understand something. You need to understand how a woman ends up buying a house on her 35th birthday without telling her own mother. You need to understand what it feels like to grow up as the other daughter, the one who was always fine, the one who never needed anything, the one who learned before she could even name it that love in her family was a limited resource, and she was never first in line. So let me take you back. Let me show you how I became invisible. You do not become invisible overnight. It happens slowly, like water wearing down a stone. One forgotten moment at a time. One overlooked birthday after another. One quiet dismissal that teaches you to expect nothing, so that when you receive nothing, it feels almost like relief. At least you were not surprised. At least you were prepared. I am going to share some memories with you now. Not to complain, not to play the victim, but because understanding the past is the only way to make sense of the present. And if you are going to understand why I bought that house, why I posted that photo, why I finally stopped waiting for my mother to see me, you need to understand who I was before I learned to see myself. The Cooper family home was a 2-story colonial in a quiet neighborhood in Portland. White siding, blue shutters, a manicured lawn that my mother tended with religious devotion. From the outside, it looked like a catalog photograph of American family life. The kind of house where happy families lived. The kind of house where children were loved equally, and no one was ever forgotten. From the inside, it was a house with unspoken rules, and I learned those rules before I could read. The first rule I learned was this: Lily needed more. I needed less. And somehow that was supposed to be a compliment. Let me tell you about my 8th birthday. 8 is a big number when you are a child. It feels important. It feels like the beginning of something. I had been looking forward to it for months. I asked my mother for a small party, nothing elaborate, just pizza and cake and 4 friends from school. That was all I wanted. 4 girls from my class, the ones I ate lunch with, the ones I traded stickers with at recess. My mother said yes. She said it in that distracted way she often said things to me, while simultaneously helping Lily with a school project. But she said yes. And that was enough for me. I spent 2 weeks imagining that party. I wrote the guest list on a piece of notebook paper and folded it carefully and kept it in my desk drawer. I picked out which dress I would wear. I practiced what I would say when my friends arrived. I imagined blowing out the candles and making a wish. The morning of my birthday, I woke up early. I put on my dress, the blue one with the white collar that I had been saving. I went downstairs expecting to see balloons, streamers, a cake on the counter. But the house was quiet. The kitchen was empty. There was nothing. I found my mother in the living room on the phone. She was talking to someone about Lily's dance recital, which was happening the following week. Her voice was animated, engaged. She did not see me standing in the doorway. I waited until she hung up. Then I tugged on her sleeve. "Mom," I said, "my party. Where is everyone?" My mother's face went pale. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, honey," she said. "I completely forgot to send the invitations." I meant to. But then Lily had that recital coming up and I got so busy and it just slipped my mind. I stood there in my blue dress with the white collar, the dress I had been saving for weeks, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. No friends came that day. There was no pizza. There was no party. My mother rushed to the grocery store and came back with a sheet cake from the bakery section. It said, "Happy Birthday," in generic blue frosting. There was no name on it because they did not have time to write one. I ate that nameless cake alone at the kitchen table, while my mother apologized and Lily practiced pirouettes in the living room, completely unaware that anything was wrong. That night, my mother sat on the edge of my bed. She stroked my hair and looked at me with what I now recognize as guilt, but her words did not match her eyes. "You are so strong, honey," she said. "You understand. Lily is more sensitive. She needs extra attention. But you are my rock." I was 8 years old. I did not have the language to argue. I only knew that being strong meant not crying. Being a rock meant not needing. Understanding meant accepting less without complaint. So I nodded. I said, "Okay." And I watched my mother leave my room with something that looked almost like relief on her face. That phrase followed me through my entire childhood. You are strong. You understand. Lily needs more. It was the excuse that explained everything, every forgotten birthday, every overlooked achievement, every time my mother chose my sister over me. I was strong. I understood. I did not need as much. I did not know it then, but my mother had handed me a role that night, and I would spend the next 27 years playing it perfectly. 2 years later, Lily turned 8, the same age I had been when I got the nameless grocery store cake. But Lily's experience was nothing like mine. My mother spent 3 weeks planning her party. The theme was Princess Garden Party. There were custom invitations with Lily's name printed in gold script. 22 children from her class attended. A professional photographer walked around taking pictures. The cake was 3 tiers tall, decorated with edible flowers that matched Lily's dress. I watched from the corner of the backyard. I was 10 years old by then, old enough to help, but not old enough to be included. I carried trays of food, I refilled drinks, I picked up discarded napkins and threw them away. No one thanked me. At the end of the party, the photographer gathered everyone for a group photo. My mother and Lily stood in the center, beaming. Someone handed me a phone and asked if I could take a backup shot, so I did. I took the picture. I was not in it. Years later, I made the mistake of scrolling through my mother's Facebook profile. I wanted to see if my memory was exaggerating things. It was not. She had posted photos from every single one of Lily's birthdays since 2008. custom cakes, group shots, candid moments of Lily laughing and opening presents. The captions were effusive. My beautiful girl. So proud of my baby. Sweet 16 for my sweetheart. I searched for photos from my own birthdays. There were 4. In one of them, I was partially cut off at the edge of the frame. In another, I was in the background, out of focus, while Lily opened a Christmas present in the foreground. The caption mentioned Lily. I closed the app and never searched again. Some evidence is better left unexamined. But there was one person who saw me. One person who never forgot. My grandmother Eleanor, my mother's mother, was a woman in her late 70s with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She lived in a small apartment across town, alone since my grandfather Walter passed, and she watched the family dynamics with quiet disapproval. Every year, without fail, a birthday card arrived in the mail addressed to me. Inside was a handwritten note and a check for $50. The notes were always specific. Happy 14th birthday, my dear Hannah. I hope you are still reading those mystery novels you love. I am proud of you. Love, Grandma Eleanor. She remembered details. She asked about my grades, my hobbies, my dreams. She never confused me with Lily. She never forgot. By the time I was 12, I had perfected the art of not needing. I made my own breakfast. I walked myself to school. I signed my own permission slips when my mother forgot. I learned to forge her signature so I would not have to ask. Teachers called me mature for my age. Relatives said I was so independent. No one asked why a 12-year-old had learned to need nothing from anyone. I did not become invisible because my mother hated me. I became invisible because she forgot to look. And eventually I stopped waving. Growing up, I used to think my mother had 2 different hearts, one for Lily, one for me. Lily's heart was warm and attentive, always beating in her direction, always aware of her needs and her moods and her smallest accomplishments. My heart was quieter, functional but distant, like a clock ticking in another room that no one remembered to wind. I want to be clear about something before I continue. I am not here to villainize my sister. Lily was not cruel. She was not malicious. She was simply a girl who grew up in sunlight and never thought to ask why her sister stood in the shade. The difference between us was not about love. My mother loved me. I believe that, even now. But love without presence is like a letter that never gets mailed. The intention exists, but it never arrives. Let me show you what I mean. My 16th birthday should have mattered. Sweet 16, a milestone. By then, I had learned not to expect a party. Those dreams had died years earlier, buried under a pile of forgotten invitations and nameless grocery store cakes. But I allowed myself one small hope. Maybe my mother would take me to dinner, just the 2 of us. A quiet celebration, something to mark the occasion. 2 weeks before my birthday, I found my mother in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner. I approached her carefully, the way you might approach a wild animal you did not want to startle. "Mom," I said, "for my birthday, could we maybe go to a restaurant? Just you and me, somewhere nice, nothing fancy." My mother looked up from the cutting board. Her eyes were distracted, already somewhere else. "Of course, honey," she said. "That sounds lovely. Let me check my calendar." I held on to those words for 2 weeks. I replayed them at night before I fell asleep. "Of course, honey. That sounds lovely." I imagined what restaurant she might choose. I imagined sitting across from her, just the 2 of us, having a real conversation. I imagined her looking at me, really looking, and seeing the daughter I had become. On the morning of my 16th birthday, I woke to an empty house. There was a note on the kitchen counter in my mother's handwriting. Had to take Lily to an emergency fitting for her recital costume. Back soon. There is leftover lasagna in the fridge. Happy birthday, sweetheart. I stood in the kitchen holding that note. I was 16 years old. I was alone. The lasagna in the refrigerator had been there for 3 days. I recognized the container from Sunday's dinner. I opened the refrigerator door and looked at it for a long time. Then I closed the door without eating. My mother came home at 9 o'clock that night. She was exhausted from Lily's fitting. She hugged me briefly in the hallway and said, "Happy birthday, baby." And then she went to bed. There was no dinner. There was no cake. There was no candle to blow out. That night, I wrote in my journal, "I am 16 today." I celebrated by looking at 3-day-old lasagna. I did not even eat it. 2 years later, Lily turned 16. I was 18 by then, about to graduate high school. I already knew what to expect. My mother spent 6 weeks planning Lily's party. She rented a ballroom at a hotel downtown. She hired a DJ who specialized in Sweet 16 celebrations. She ordered a custom dress for Lily from a boutique, dusty rose silk with hand-sewn crystals along the neckline. The guest list had 73 names on it. I attended, of course. I helped set up. I arranged the gift table just so, making sure the cards were visible and the wrapping paper coordinated with the color scheme. I checked that the caterers knew where to put the appetizers. I wore a dress I had bought myself from a thrift store because no one had thought to take me shopping. Halfway through the party, my mother took the microphone. She gave a speech about Lily, how proud she was, how beautiful Lily had become, how Lily had always been her joy and her light. The room applauded. Lily cried happy tears and hugged our mother. I stood near the back, holding a tray of champagne glasses for the adults, watching like I always watched. At the end of the night, a professional photographer arranged the family for a portrait. My mother and Lily and my father Richard stood together in front of the balloon arch, their smiles bright and practiced. Someone handed me a phone and asked me to take a backup shot in case something went wrong with the professional camera. I took the picture. I captured their happiness. I was not in the frame. That night, driving home in the back seat while Lily slept against our mother's shoulder in the front, I understood something I had been circling for years. I was not part of this family in the same way they were. I was adjacent to it, a supporting character in someone else's story, a stagehand who helped the show run smoothly but never took a bow. I want to say something about Lily here because I think it matters. My sister was not a bad person. She was not scheming or malicious. She did not consciously take my share of our mother's love. She simply never noticed the imbalance. She grew up being the center of attention and assumed that was normal. The sun does not wonder why the moon is dark. Our relationship was not hostile. We were polite to each other. We exchanged Christmas gifts. We texted occasionally about nothing important. But there was no depth between us, no real knowing. When we talked, Lily spoke about herself, her job, her boyfriend Marcus, her anxieties and her ambitions. I listened because that was my role. When I tried to talk about my own life, her eyes would glaze over, and within minutes the subject would drift back to her. I do not blame Lily for being loved more. I blame my mother for making me feel like I was worth less. Lily was just a girl standing in the light. My mother was the one who decided where the light would fall. But there was one person who refused to let me disappear completely. Once, when I was 17, I visited my grandmother Eleanor alone. My mother had not arranged the visit. I had called Eleanor myself and asked if I could come over. She sounded surprised but pleased. We sat in her small living room drinking tea from china cups that had belonged to her mother. The apartment was quiet and smelled like lavender. Eleanor listened to me talk about school, about my plans for college, about a boy I liked who did not know I existed. She did not interrupt. She did not redirect the conversation to Lily. She just listened. As I was leaving, she took my hand and held it for a moment. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Her eyes, sharp and knowing, searched my face. "Your mother was not always like this," she said quietly. "She learned it somewhere. I have tried for years to understand where I went wrong." I did not know what she meant. I was too young to understand that pain could be inherited, that patterns could be passed down through generations like eye color or a tendency toward silence. I just nodded and kissed her cheek and drove home wondering what she was trying to tell me. Years later, I would find out. My high school graduation should have been a triumph. I finished second in my class. Salutatorian. I gave a speech in front of 500 people about perseverance and finding your own path. I wore a white dress under my gown that I bought with money I earned from my part-time job at the bookstore. My family arrived 20 minutes late. I was already on stage halfway through my speech when I saw them slip into seats near the back of the auditorium. My mother had her phone out. She was texting someone. Probably something about Lily. I finished my speech. The audience applauded. I returned to my seat with the other graduates and accepted my diploma when my name was called. Afterward, my mother found me in the crowd. She hugged me and said, "That was lovely, honey. I am so proud." But her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she stepped away to answer it before I could respond. My father Richard found me a few minutes later. He took a photograph of me in my cap and gown. He told me he was proud of me. His voice was quiet and sincere, the way it always was when he said important things. It was enough. It had to be enough. By the time I graduated, I had accepted my role in the family. I was the helper, the capable one, the one who did not need. I did not fight it anymore. I just built my life around it. But what I did not know yet was that leaving home would not free me from the pattern. It would just give me more space to pretend it did not hurt. I left home at 22, the same week I graduated college. I packed everything I owned into my Honda Civic, a car I had bought myself with 3 years of part-time bookstore wages, 2 suitcases, a box of books, a folder of important documents. My entire life fit into the trunk and back seat of a 10-year-old sedan. My mother helped me carry one bag to the car. She was distracted, her phone pressed between her shoulder and ear, talking to someone about wedding venue options for Lily and Marcus. They had just gotten engaged. The whole family was buzzing with excitement about it. My graduation and departure seemed like minor footnotes in the larger story of Lily's upcoming marriage. We said goodbye at the curb. My mother hugged me with one arm, the other still holding her phone. "Call me when you get there, okay?" she said. Then she walked back inside before I reached the end of the street. I told myself I was starting fresh. I told myself the distance would heal everything. I was wrong. Distance does not erase patterns. It just gives you more room to carry them. Portland became my new home. I rented a 1-bedroom apartment the size of a large closet in a building that smelled like old carpet and fried food. I started as an entry-level logistics coordinator at a shipping company called Ridgeway Distribution. The pay was modest, the hours were long, but I was good at it. I learned everything I could, staying late to study routes and systems and processes that no one else wanted to understand. I arrived early every morning. I took on projects that other employees avoided. I became the person who solved problems quietly and efficiently, without needing recognition or praise. The same skills that had made me invisible at home made me invaluable at work. My supervisors noticed. They promoted me. Year 1, I was a coordinator. Year 3, I became a senior coordinator. Year 5, I was promoted to operations manager. Year 8, I became senior operations manager with a team of 6 people reporting to me. I built something real, something that belonged to me, something that no one in my family knew anything about. My mother called occasionally. The conversations were short and surface level. She asked about the weather in Portland. She asked if I was eating enough. She never asked about my job title or my promotions or what I actually did all day. Once, at a family Thanksgiving, an uncle asked me what I did for work. Before I could answer, my mother interrupted. "Oh, she does something with shipping," she said, waving her hand vaguely. "Boxes and trucks, I think." "Lily, tell everyone about your new PR campaign." I smiled. I ate my turkey. I said nothing. Every holiday, I drove the 3 hours back to my parents' house. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter. I told myself it was what families did. I told myself I wanted to see my father. But every time I walked through that front door, I became the helper again. I cooked the side dishes while my mother focused on the main course, adjusting seasonings according to Lily's preferences. I set the table. I washed the dishes afterward while everyone else relaxed in the living room. I fixed the Wi-Fi when it stopped working. I drove to the nursing home to pick up Grandma Eleanor because everyone else was too busy preparing for Lily's arrival. Lily always came with Marcus, and they were treated like visiting royalty. My mother fussed over them constantly. Where would they like to sit? Was the guest room comfortable enough? Did Marcus need anything for his allergies? Their comfort was a family priority. I slept on the pull-out couch in the basement. No one asked if I was comfortable. I learned to bring my own pillow from home because I knew no one would think to provide one. At the end of every holiday, I drove back to Portland exhausted. Not from the travel, from the performance, from pretending that being the helper was enough, from smiling when my mother posted family photos online where I was cropped out or standing at the edge, half hidden behind Marcus's shoulder. Then came the year everything changed. 3 years before my 35th birthday, my father was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The doctors gave him 6 months to live. He lasted 4. During those 4 months, I took a leave of absence from work. I moved back into my childhood home temporarily. I became my father's primary caregiver while my mother fell apart, and Lily claimed she could not handle seeing her father so sick. Too painful, she said. Too traumatic. So she stayed away, visiting only on weekends when she felt emotionally prepared, which was not often. I sat with my father through the long nights when he could not sleep. I read to him from his favorite mystery novels. I held his hand when the pain medication made him confused and frightened. We did not talk about the past. There was not enough time, and my father had never been a man of many words. But sometimes he looked at me with something in his eyes that felt like an apology, like he wanted to say something but did not know how to begin. One night, 3 weeks before he died, my father squeezed my hand. His voice was barely a whisper by then, rough and thin from the illness. "I should have done more," he said. "I should have fought for you. I am sorry, sweetheart. I was a coward. I did not know what to say. I told him I loved him. I told him it was okay. I was not sure either statement was entirely true, but they were the words he needed to hear." He closed his eyes and drifted back to sleep, his hand still wrapped around mine. My father died on a Tuesday morning in April. The funeral was on Saturday. My mother was inconsolable, barely able to stand during the service. Lily wept beautifully in a black designer dress that fit her perfectly. I wrote the obituary. I planned the service. I stood at the podium and delivered the eulogy because no one else could hold themselves together long enough to speak. Afterward, relatives and family friends approached me with the same words. "You were so strong up there, so composed. Your father would be proud." I thanked them. I shook their hands. I wanted to scream. 2 weeks after the funeral, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. A man's voice, professional and careful, came through the speaker. "Ms. Cooper? My name is Gerald Hutchins. I was your father's personal attorney. I need to speak with you privately about a matter regarding his estate." I was confused. My father's will had been straightforward. Everything went to my mother, with provisions for both daughters to inherit equally when she passed. There was nothing complicated, nothing secret. But Gerald Hutchins was insistent. "This is a separate matter, Ms. Cooper," he said. "Something your father arranged many years ago. Something he specifically requested I discuss with you alone. Not your mother, not your sister, only you." He asked me to come to his office in downtown Portland. He told me to bring identification. He told me to prepare myself. I hung up the phone with my heart pounding. My father had a secret. Something meant only for me. Something he had been planning for years. I did not know what it was, but I knew it was important. I could hear it in the careful way Gerald Hutchins chose his words. After the funeral, after the relatives stopped calling, after my mother began to function again, I returned to my apartment in Portland. I went back to work. I threw myself into projects and spreadsheets and problems I could actually solve. I did not talk about my father. I did not talk about the mysterious phone call or the appointment I had scheduled with Gerald Hutchins. Grief does not follow schedules. It arrives at random moments. When I smelled pipe tobacco like my father used to smoke. When I heard a song he loved on the radio. When I reached for my phone to call him before remembering he would never answer again. I visited my family less after Richard died. Without him, there was even less reason to go home. My mother called occasionally, but the conversations were short. Updates on Lily and Marcus, complaints about the house being too quiet, never questions about my life or my work or how I was handling the loss of my father. I realized something painful during those months alone. My father had been the last thread connecting me to that family. Without him, I was finally completely adrift. But I did not know yet that he had left me something. A lifeline I never expected. A secret that would change everything. That phone call with the lawyer would change my life. I just did not know it yet. Gerald Hutchins had an office on the 14th floor of a glass building in downtown Portland. The kind of office with leather chairs and framed diplomas on the walls, and a view of the Willamette River through floor-to-ceiling windows. The kind of office where secrets were kept in locked drawers and difficult conversations happened behind closed doors. 6 months before my 35th birthday, I took a half day off work. I never took time off. My colleagues looked at me strangely when I said I had a personal appointment. I drove downtown and parked in an overpriced garage and rode the elevator up, watching the numbers climb, feeling my heart climb with them. For 2 weeks since that phone call, I had been imagining what this could be. A debt my father had left behind. A confession of some kind. Maybe a second family I never knew about. My mind had cycled through every possibility, each one more unsettling than the last. The receptionist offered me water. I declined. My mouth was dry, but I did not trust my hands not to shake. I sat in the waiting room staring at a painting of a sailboat on a calm sea, wondering what my father had needed to tell me that he could not say while he was alive. The door to the inner office opened. Gerald Hutchins was a man in his early 60s with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He shook my hand firmly. "Miss Cooper," he said, "thank you for coming. Please, sit down. What I am about to tell you, your father wanted you to hear from me, not from a letter." I sat in the leather chair across from his desk. He opened a drawer and removed a manila folder. His movements were careful and deliberate, like a man who had delivered difficult news many times before and understood the weight of every gesture. He slid the folder across the desk toward me. Inside was a legal document, a trust agreement. I saw the date at the top. 15 years ago, I would have been 20 years old. I scanned the page until I found the beneficiary line. Hannah Marie Cooper. No other names, just mine. The amount made me stop breathing. $152,000, accumulated over 15 years through monthly contributions from an account I never knew existed. Separate from the family finances. Separate from anything my mother controlled. I looked up at Gerald Hutchins. "I do not understand," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Where did this come from?" "Your father set this up when you were 20, he explained. He contributed every month from his personal savings, a separate account your mother had no access to. He asked me to manage it and to contact you after his death. He was very specific that no one else was to know, not your mother, not your sister, only you, and only after he was gone." I stared at the number on the page. 15 years of secret savings. 15 years of my father quietly putting money aside for me while I thought he barely noticed I existed. The math stunned me. He had been saving for me since I was in college, since before I even understood how invisible I was in my own family. Gerald reached into the folder and pulled out an envelope. My father's handwriting was on the front. "For Hannah, when the time is right." I took the envelope with trembling fingers. It was light, just a single sheet of paper inside. I opened it carefully, as if the paper itself might crumble if I moved too quickly. "Dear Hannah," the letter began. "I know I failed you in many ways. I saw what was happening, and I did not stop it. I could not change your mother, and I was too weak to fight her. But I could do this. This money is yours, only yours. Use it to build something that belongs to you, something no one can take away. I love you. I always saw you, even when it did not seem like it. Dad." I read the letter 3 times. By the third reading, I was crying. Not gentle tears, the kind of sobs that shake your whole body. The kind you have been holding back for decades without realizing it. Gerald Hutchins left the room to give me privacy. He said something about getting me water. I barely heard him. I just sat there in that leather chair, holding my father's letter, finally understanding something I had never known. He saw me. All those years when I thought I was invisible, when I thought no one noticed, my father was watching. He was documenting. He was saving. He could not fix the present, so he tried to give me a future. I did not know how to feel. Part of me was grateful, profoundly, achingly grateful. My father had seen me when my mother refused to. He had loved me enough to plan for my escape. But another part of me was angry. If he saw everything, why did he never speak up? Why did he never demand that my mother treat us equally? Why did he compensate in secret instead of confronting the problem openly? I sat with that anger for a long time. And then I understood. I knew my father. I knew the man who avoided conflict at all costs, who kept the peace even when peace was unjust, who loved me but did not know how to fight for me. The trust fund was the loudest thing Richard Cooper ever did. It was his way of screaming. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my purse. I decided in that moment that I would honor what my father gave me. I would use it to build something that belonged only to me, something no one could take away. Over the following months, I began searching for a house. Not in Portland. Too close to my mother. Not in a big city. Too expensive. Too crowded. I wanted somewhere quiet. Somewhere I could breathe. Somewhere I could disappear and rebuild myself from the ground up. I found Bend in February, 3 months before my birthday. A small mountain town about 180 miles from Portland. Pine trees and hiking trails and a lake that sparkled in the winter sun. The kind of place people went to escape their old lives. The house appeared on my screen one evening while I was scrolling through listings. A craftsman-style home on a small lake. 3 bedrooms, a fireplace, a dock that stretched out over the water. The asking price was $145,000. I did the math. With my father's trust and the savings I had accumulated over the years, I could afford it. I could pay cash, no mortgage, no bank, no paper trail that anyone in my family would notice. I drove to Bend on a Saturday to see it in person. The real estate agent, a woman named Patricia with a warm smile and practical shoes, walked me through every room. I stood on the dock and looked at the water and felt something I had not felt in years. Hope. This is it, I whispered to myself. This is where I start over. For 3 months, I waited. The sellers accepted my offer. The paperwork moved slowly through the system. I told no one. I continued my life as if nothing had changed. I went to work. I called my mother occasionally and listened to her talk about Lily's latest crisis. I attended Easter at the family home, cooked the ham, washed the dishes, slept on the pull-out couch. I said nothing about the house, nothing about the trust, nothing about the door I was about to walk through. At night, alone in my Portland apartment, I looked at the photos Patricia sent me. The house in springtime, the lake thawing, the trees beginning to bloom, a future waiting for me. Patricia confirmed the closing date in April, May 15th, my 35th birthday. I did not plan it that way. But when I realized the dates aligned, I knew it was a sign. I was going to give myself the birthday present my mother never would. 1 week before my birthday, my phone rang. It was my mother. For a brief, foolish moment, my heart lifted. Maybe this year. Maybe she remembered. Maybe she was calling to ask about my plans. "Hannah, honey," she said, "I need a favor. Can you call the florist on 5th Street? I need to confirm the peony arrangement for Lily's birthday party next Saturday. They need verbal confirmation. You know how these places are." I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, and said nothing for 5 full seconds. My mother was calling 1 week before my birthday to ask me to help plan Lily's party. Not to wish me an early happy birthday. Not to ask what I wanted. To delegate a task. To make me, once again, the invisible helper for my sister's celebration. "I'll think about it, Mom," I said. Then I hung up without saying goodbye. I called Patricia that same afternoon. "Can we move the closing up?" I asked. "I want to sign on the morning of the 15th. First thing. The night before my birthday, I packed a small bag, a change of clothes, my laptop, the folder from Gerald Hutchins with all the trust documents, my father's letter. I looked around my Portland apartment, the place I had lived for 8 years. It felt smaller than it used to. The walls felt closer. I was ready to leave. Tomorrow I would sign papers. Tomorrow I would own something. Tomorrow I would post a photograph and watch my family realize they never knew me at all. I did not sleep much that night, but when I did, I dreamed of water, still water, a lake with no ripples, peace. When I woke, it was May 15th. I was 35 years old. I checked my phone and found one message from my mother. Not a birthday wish, a reminder about the florist. For the first time in years, I smiled at her forgetfulness. Because today, it did not hurt. Today, it was the confirmation I needed, the permission I was never going to get from anyone but myself. I picked up my bag, my keys, my father's letter. I walked out the door. I got in my car. I drove 3 hours north. And that brings us back to where I started, standing on my new dock, posting a photograph, turning off my phone, and waiting for the explosion. For 6 hours, I existed in a world where my family did not know who I really was. Those were the most peaceful 6 hours I had experienced in 35 years. After posting the photograph, I spent the afternoon exploring my new house. I walked through each room slowly, touching the walls, running my fingers along the window frames, standing in doorways and imagining the life I would build here. The afternoon light poured through the windows and made patterns on the hardwood floors. I could hear birds singing in the trees outside. The lake was visible from almost every room, calm and silver, reflecting the mountains in the distance. I made tea in my new kitchen, the first cup of anything prepared in this house. I carried it down to the dock and sat with my feet dangling over the water, watching the sunlight shift across the surface. I breathed deeply. I let myself feel something I had not felt in years. Stillness. Not the stillness of being ignored, but the stillness of being complete. My phone sat on the kitchen counter, powered off. A black rectangle full of silent chaos. I knew what was happening on the other side of that darkness. Notifications piling up. Phone calls going to voicemail. Text messages stacking on top of each other like a tower of panic and confusion. But for those 6 hours, I let the storm rage without me. At 7 in the evening, as the sun began to set over the mountains, I decided it was time. I walked back inside, picked up my phone, and held down the power button. The screen glowed to life. The icons appeared. And then the flood began. The phone vibrated continuously for nearly 30 seconds. Notification after notification cascading down the screen, too fast to read. When it finally stopped, I looked at the numbers. 23 missed calls, 14 from my mother, 6 from Lily, 3 from numbers I did not recognize, probably relatives recruited to reach me when the others failed. 47 text messages. I scrolled through the preview pane without opening them, reading just enough to understand the trajectory of the day. My mother's messages started confused and escalated quickly. The first one, sent around 2 in the afternoon. "Hannah, where did you get the money for this?" The second, "Call me immediately." Then, "Why didn't you tell us you were buying a house?" Followed by, "I'm worried about you. This isn't like you." And then, in all capital letters, "Hannah, call me." The final message, sent just an hour ago. "Your sister is very upset. You have ruined her week." I read that last one twice. "Your sister is very upset. You have ruined her week." On my birthday, my mother's primary concern was that my announcement had upset Lily. Not congratulations, not curiosity, not pride, just irritation that I had somehow made Lily's life more difficult by celebrating my own. Lily's messages were sharper. "What the hell, Hannah?" And then, "Mom is freaking out. Thanks for that." Followed by, "Did you win the lottery or something?" And, "You could have at least told us." The final message was just one word: selfish. There it was. The same accusation from childhood. The same word that had been used to keep me small and quiet and invisible for 35 years. Selfish. As if wanting something for myself, celebrating something I had earned, was a crime against the family. I closed the text messages and opened my voicemail. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the kitchen table. I wanted to hear their voices. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. The first voicemail was from my mother, left at 2:34 in the afternoon. Her voice was confused, almost gentle. "Hannah, honey, I saw your post. Did you really buy a house? Call me. I do not understand what is happening." By the fourth message, left around 4:15, her tone had shifted. "Hannah, this is getting ridiculous. Why aren't you answering? I have called 4 times. Your sister is upset. Call me back." The eighth message, left at 5:47, was different. The mask was slipping. "I do not know what kind of game you are playing, but this is incredibly inconsiderate. We had no idea you were even looking at houses. Where did you get that kind of money? This does not make any sense." The 12th message, left just before 7, was cold and controlled. The voice my mother used when she was furious but trying to sound reasonable. "Hannah Marie Cooper. You call me back right now. We need to talk about what is really going on here. I am starting to think something is seriously wrong with you. Something is seriously wrong with you." I let those words sit in the air for a moment. My mother's first instinct, when confronted with evidence of my independence, was to question my sanity. Before calling anyone back, I opened Facebook. The photograph had 63 comments now. I read through them slowly, studying each one like evidence at a trial. The reactions from my mother's side of the family were predictable. My Aunt Judith wrote, "Beautiful home." But why didn't you tell your mother first? She is beside herself. Uncle Robert commented, "Congratulations. I think. Everything okay?" My cousin Mark asked, "Wait, you bought a house? With what money?" But then I noticed something interesting. The comments from my father's side of the family were different. Aunt Martha, my father's sister, wrote, "So proud of you, sweetie. Your dad would be beaming right now. You have always been the strong one." My cousin Jennifer commented, "Queen, move. Get it, Hannah." Even an old friend from high school I had not spoken to in years chimed in, "This is amazing. Living your best life." The divide was clear. My mother's family was suspicious, questioning, concerned about proper protocol. My father's family was celebrating. They were proud. They saw this for what it was, a victory, not a crisis. I sat with that realization for a moment. Then I picked up my phone and called my mother. She answered before the first ring finished. "Hannah." Finally. Her voice was tight, controlled, the voice she used when she was furious but trying to appear calm. "Hi, Mom," I said. I kept my voice neutral. "Do you have any idea how worried I have been? Where are you? What is going on? Where did you get the money for this house? Why didn't you tell us? How long have you been planning this? Why did I have to find out on Facebook like everyone else?" The questions came rapid fire, one after another without space for me to answer. I let her finish. Then I responded, keeping my voice calm and steady. "I saved it," I said. "I have been saving for years. I did not think to tell you. It is my house. I can announce it however I want." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, trying to regain control. "I do not understand you, Hannah," she said. "I have never understood you. You have always been so secretive, so closed off. You never let me in." Something shifted inside me. Not anger, something clearer, more precise. I spoke slowly, deliberately. "Mom, do you know what today is?" Silence. I could hear her thinking, trying to remember. "Today is May 15th, I said. "It is my birthday, my 35th birthday. You called me last week, not to ask about my plans, not to wish me an early happy birthday, but to ask me to call a florist for Lily's party. You forgot. Again." The silence stretched longer this time. 5 seconds. 10. 15. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed. Defensive now. Scrambling. "Hannah, that is not— I was going to call you later today. I have just been so busy with Lily's party preparations and—" I cut her off. "Mom, stop. I did not call to argue. I called to tell you that I bought myself a birthday present, the one you were never going to give me. I gave myself something that matters." Another pause. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted to offense. The pivot I knew so well. "You are being dramatic," she said. "I have always supported you. You never needed anything from me. You made that very clear. This is exactly what I mean. You pull away, you keep secrets, and then you blame me for not being close enough. Where did the money really come from, Hannah? Because I know what you make, and you could not afford this on your salary." I heard the accusation underneath her words. She thought I had done something wrong to get this money, stolen it, borrowed it illegally, something shameful. I could have told her about the trust fund. I could have explained that my father saw everything and secretly protected me. But I was not ready to use that weapon. Not yet. "The money is mine, Mom," I said. "Legally, legitimately. That is all you need to know." "We are not done talking about this," she said. Her voice was hard. "I want to see you. This weekend. We need to sit down as a family and discuss what is happening with you." "I will think about it," I said. Then I hung up before she could respond. I set the phone face down on the table. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline, from the unfamiliar feeling of speaking back. That was the first time I ever hung up on my mother. It would not be the last. The house was quiet again. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and walked outside. The sun had set while I was on the phone. The sky was purple and orange at the edges, fading to deep blue overhead. The lake reflected the last light like a mirror. I stood on my porch and breathed the mountain air. I expected to feel guilty, anxious, worried about what would come next. But as I looked out at the water, I felt something else entirely: relief. For the first time in 35 years, I had said what I actually felt. I had not smoothed it over. I had not apologized for existing. I had just spoken. I had spent my whole life trying not to be a burden. That night, I finally understood. I was never the burden. I was just the one carrying everyone else's. Before I went to bed, I picked up my phone one more time. I typed a message to a number I knew by heart. "Grandma, can I visit you tomorrow? There is something I need to understand. About Mom. About all of it." The response came within minutes. "I have been waiting for you to ask. Come at 10. Bring tissues." I had known my grandmother for 35 years. But that morning, driving to see her, I realized I had never really known her at all. I woke early in my new house. The first full night of sleep in a bed I owned. I should have felt rested, but my mind was churning with questions. Eleanor's text echoed in my head. "I have been waiting for you to ask. Bring tissues." Those words carried weight. They suggested that whatever she was about to tell me had been waiting a long time to be said. Willow Creek Assisted Living was 45 minutes from Bend, a quiet facility nestled in pine trees with a view of the mountains. Eleanor had moved there 2 years ago after a fall made living alone too risky. She hated leaving her independence, but she never complained. She adapted. Just like I always had. I gripped the steering wheel as I drove, wondering what my grandmother knew that I did not. Whatever it was, she had been holding it for years. The question was whether I was ready to hear it. The facility was not a depressing place. The hallways were bright and clean. The staff smiled and waved as I walked past. There were fresh flowers on every table. Eleanor had chosen this place herself, researched it for months, and announced her decision like a general issuing orders. Even in her 80s, she refused to let anyone else control her fate. Her apartment was small but dignified. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with mysteries and biographies. A window looked out onto a garden where roses were just beginning to bloom. On the nightstand sat a framed photograph of Eleanor and my grandfather Walter on their wedding day, 60 years ago. She still kept him close. Eleanor sat in a wingback chair by the window. She was dressed in slacks and a soft blue sweater, her silver hair pinned back neatly. Her eyes, sharp and knowing, tracked me as I entered the room. She did not smile. She did not offer pleasantries. "Close the door," she said. "No hello, no small talk. Sit down. We have a lot to discuss. And I am not getting any younger." I sat in the chair across from her. The morning light caught the lines on her face, the evidence of 8 decades of watching and waiting. "I saw your photograph," she said. "The house, the caption." And I thought, finally. She has finally stopped waiting for them to see her. Something in my chest loosened at her words. She understood. She had always understood. "I have watched you, Hannah. Your whole life. I have watched you fade into the background while your sister stood in the spotlight. I have watched your mother forget you over and over, and I have seen you pretend it did not hurt." Her voice was steady, but I could hear the weight beneath it, the accumulation of years of silent observation. "I should have said something sooner," she continued. "I should have intervened. But I told myself it was not my place. I told myself your parents would figure it out, that your mother would eventually see what she was doing." She paused and looked down at her hands. "I was wrong, and I am sorry." My throat tightened. "Grandma," I said, "why does she do it? Why does Mom treat us so differently? What did I do wrong?" Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. She reached out and took my hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, "you did not do anything wrong. But to understand your mother, you need to understand who she was before she became your mother." She took a breath and began. "Your mother was not always like this," she said. "When she was young, she was a lot like you. Quiet, thoughtful, easy to overlook." She explained that her own mother, my great-grandmother Catherine, had 2 daughters, Diane and Patricia. Patricia was the younger one, the charming one, the one who demanded attention and received it. Catherine adored Patricia, Eleanor said. She threw her parties. She bought her dresses. She showed her off to everyone. And Diane, your mother, stood in the corner watching, waiting, never quite good enough. I stared at my grandmother. I had never heard any of this before. My mother never spoke about her childhood, and I had never thought to ask. "I tried to compensate," Eleanor continued. "I tried to give Diane the attention Catherine refused to give her, but it was not enough. The wound was already there, deep, infected, and it never healed." She looked out the window at the garden, her eyes distant. "When your mother had her own children, something happened. She saw Lily, beautiful and demanding and needing constant attention, and something clicked in her brain. She saw Patricia. She saw the kind of child who gets loved, and she poured everything into Lily, just like Catherine poured everything into Patricia." Eleanor turned back to me. "And you, Hannah. You were quiet, independent, easy, and your mother looked at you and saw herself, the child who did not get chosen. But instead of protecting you from that pain, she repeated it. Because that is what unhealed wounds do. They spread. The words hit me like stones. My mother had been the forgotten daughter once. She had felt exactly what I felt. And instead of breaking the cycle, she had continued it. I have spent 35 years watching my daughter make the same mistake my mother made," Eleanor said. Her voice cracked. "And I could not stop it. I could not save you from it, just like I could not save her." She reached beside her chair and lifted a small wooden box. The finish was worn smooth from years of handling. She held it out to me. "Your father gave this to me 6 months before he died," she said. "He asked me to keep it safe, to give it to you when the time was right." She pressed the box into my hands. "I think the time is right." I lifted the lid. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me, all in my father's careful handwriting, all unopened. "He wrote to you for years," Eleanor said softly. "Every time he saw your mother overlook you, every time he felt helpless. He could not say it out loud, so he wrote it down, but he never sent them. He was afraid of what would happen if Diane found out." My hands trembled as I picked up the top envelope. It was dated 10 years ago, my 25th birthday. I opened it and read the first lines aloud, my voice breaking. Dear Hannah, today you turned 25. Your mother forgot to call until evening. I watched you wait by the phone all day, pretending you were not waiting. I wanted to shake her. I wanted to scream at her. Instead, I sat in my office and wrote you this letter I will never send. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I see you, sweetheart. I always have. I could not continue. The tears came, silent at first, then shaking my whole body. I had not cried like this in years, maybe ever. I held the box of letters against my chest and let 35 years of grief pour out of me. Eleanor did not rush me. She did not offer empty comfort. She simply sat there, present, waiting. When my sobs finally slowed, she spoke again. Your father loved you more than he knew how to show, she said. But he was a quiet man raised by quiet people. He did not know how to fight. He did not know how to stand up to your mother. The trust fund, you know about it now, yes? I nodded. That was his way of screaming, she said. He could not fix the present, so he tried to give you a future. Somewhere you could go where she could not reach you. These letters are the same thing, his voice trapped on paper waiting for you to hear it. I looked down at the box. 30 years of my father's love, hidden away, waiting for me to be ready. Eleanor leaned forward and took my hand again. I failed your mother, she said. I failed you. But you, her voice grew stronger, you are breaking the cycle. You bought that house. You spoke your truth. You are doing what I could not do, what your father could not do, what Diane still cannot do. She squeezed my hand firmly. Do not let her guilt you into going back to the way things were. Do not let Lily make you feel selfish. You have spent 35 years shrinking. It is time to take up space. I stayed with Eleanor for another hour. We did not talk much. We just sat together, the box of letters between us, the truth finally spoken. On the drive home, I pulled over at a rest stop. I sat in my car with the box on the passenger seat and read 3 more letters. Each one was a wound. Each one was a gift. Each one was my father saying, I saw you. I loved you. I am sorry. By the time I reached my house, something had shifted inside me. I understood my mother now. Not forgave, but understood. And I knew what I had to do next. I had the truth now, all of it. The question was whether my mother wanted to hear it, and more importantly, whether I wanted to be the one to tell her I drove to Portland with my father's letters in the passenger seat. 30 years of his silent love, riding next to me like a witness, like proof that I had not imagined everything, like armor for the battle ahead. 3 days had passed since my visit to Eleanor. I had spent those days reading every letter in the box. Some of them I read multiple times, tracing my father's handwriting with my fingertip, hearing his voice in my head. I had cried. I had raged alone in my kitchen, shouting at the walls. I had sat on my dock until my eyes hurt from staring at the water. But now it was time. My mother had called 7 more times demanding a family meeting. I had finally agreed. Not because I owed her an explanation, but because I owed myself the truth spoken out loud. For 35 years, I had swallowed my words to keep the peace. Today, I was going to let them out. I was not going to Portland to fight. I was not going to scream or accuse or demand an apology I would never receive. I was simply going to say what happened. What my mother did with that information was her choice, but she was going to hear it, every word. The highway stretched ahead of me, familiar and strange at the same time. I had driven this route hundreds of times over the years, back and forth between my life in Portland and my role in the family. But today, I was not the same woman who usually made this drive. Today, I knew things I had never known before. Today, I had proof. The Cooper family home looked exactly as it always had. White siding, blue shutters, the same manicured lawn my mother tended with obsessive care. From the outside, it still looked like a catalog photograph of American family life. The kind of house where nothing bad ever happened. The kind of house where everyone was loved equally. I parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, looking at the front door. I was 8 years old in this house when I learned my birthday did not matter. I was 16 when I ate cold lasagna alone in the kitchen. I was 18 when I gave a graduation speech my mother barely heard. Every window held a memory. Every brick was a witness to my invisibility. But I was 35 now. I owned a house. I had a career. I had a box of letters proving my father saw everything. I was not the invisible girl anymore. I took a deep breath, opened the car door, and walked toward the porch. The front door opened before I reached it. My mother stood in the doorway. But behind her, sitting on the living room couch, was Lily. My stomach tightened. I had not expected this. I thought this would be a conversation between me and my mother, private, contained. Lily's presence changed everything. It added an audience, a potential ally for my mother, a complication I had not prepared for. "I thought we should all talk together," my mother said. Her voice was carefully neutral. "As a family, we have all been affected by this situation. Situation, not Hannah's achievement, not your daughter's new home. A situation, something to be managed, something problematic." Lily looked up from the couch. Her expression was hard to read, somewhere between defensive and curious. She did not say hello, she just watched. I could have left. I could have refused to do this with an audience, but I decided to stay. Let them both hear. Let there be no more secrets. The living room was arranged like a tribunal. My mother perched on the edge of the love seat, her hands clasped in her lap. Lily sat on the couch, arms crossed. I took the armchair across from them both. My mother spoke first. "I do not understand why you are making this such a big deal, Hannah. I have always supported you. I have always been there for you." She began to list evidence of her love. "I paid for your braces. I drove you to soccer practice. I came to your school plays. I held up my hand. "Mom, stop." The room went silent. My mother's mouth hung open, mid-sentence. She was not used to being interrupted. "I did not come here to listen to a list of obligations you fulfilled," I said. "I came here to talk about something else. Something you do not want to see." Her eyes narrowed, her posture stiffened. "I do not know what you mean." "Yes, you do." I leaned forward slightly. My voice was calm, almost gentle. "Mom, I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think before you answer." She shifted uncomfortably. "Okay, what did I do for my 8th birthday?" My mother blinked. Her mouth opened, closed. She looked at the ceiling, searching for a memory that was not there. "What about my 10th birthday?" I continued. "My 16th? My 30th? Nothing." She could not answer. She literally could not remember a single one of my birthdays in any detail. "Now tell me about Lily's 16th birthday." My mother's expression changed. "This," she remembered. "We had it at the Grand Ballroom downtown. There was a DJ. Her dress was dusty rose with crystals. 73 guests. The photographer stayed until midnight." I nodded slowly. "You remember every detail of Lily's party. You cannot remember a single detail of mine. Not one. In 35 years. The words hung in the air like smoke. My mother opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For the first time in my memory, she had no defense prepared. Lily broke the silence. "This is ridiculous, Hannah. Mom loves you. You know she loves you. You are just jealous because—" I turned to face my sister directly. "Jealous?" The word hung between us. I had heard it my entire life, the accusation that turned the victim into the villain. "Lily," I said, "I am not jealous of you. I have never been jealous of you." She scoffed. "Then what is this? Why are you doing this to Mom, to our family?" I kept my voice steady, quiet, almost sad. "I am not jealous, Lily. I am exhausted. There is a difference." Her expression flickered, something crossing her face that might have been confusion or might have been the first crack of understanding. I continued, I am exhausted from 35 years of being the helper. The invisible one. The one who is fine because no one bothered to ask if I actually was. I am exhausted from waiting for Mom to see me the way she sees you. I am not jealous. I am just done waiting. The room was silent. My mother finally found her voice. But it was not an apology. It was not acknowledgement. It was defense. Hannah, I never meant to hurt you. If you felt overlooked, I am sorry you felt that way. But I have always loved both of you equally. You were just different. You did not need as much attention. You were my rock. There it was, the phrase from childhood. The excuse that sounded like a compliment but functioned as erasure. Something in my chest hardened, not with anger, with clarity. My mother was not going to see it. Not today, maybe not ever. She had spent 62 years avoiding this truth. She was not going to surrender it in one conversation. I stood up from the armchair. My movements were calm, unhurried. I am not asking for an apology, Mom. I know you are not ready to give one. I am not asking you to admit you did anything wrong. I am just telling you what happened, what I experienced, what I remember. I picked up my purse. I am going home now. My home, the one I bought with the money Dad left me. Yes, Dad left me money, separately, because he saw what you never did. My mother's face went white. What are you talking about? What money? I did not explain. Not now. Ask yourself why your husband felt the need to secretly save money for one daughter and not the other. Ask yourself what he saw that you refused to see. I walked to the front door. I did not look back. I love you, Mom, but I will not pretend anymore. What you do with this is your choice. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch. The afternoon air was cool on my face. Behind me, I could hear Lily saying something to my mother. I could hear my mother's voice crack. But I did not turn around. As I reached my car, I glanced back once. My mother was standing in the doorway, one hand on the frame, her face pale as paper. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her. I got in my car and pulled out of the driveway. I did not cry. I felt something I did not expect. Not triumph, not grief. Something quieter. Freedom. It felt like the beginning of freedom. 2 weeks after the confrontation, my phone rang. I looked at the screen and nearly dropped it. It was Lily. 2 weeks of silence had passed since I walked out of our mother's house. I had been settling into my new life in Bend, finding a rhythm in the quiet. I had not called my mother. My mother had not called me. The space between us had grown, and I had let it. When I saw Lily's name on my screen, my first instinct was defense. I assumed she was calling to lecture me, to defend our mother, to accuse me of tearing the family apart. My thumb hovered over the decline button. But something made me answer. Curiosity, maybe, or the exhaustion of avoidance. I pressed accept and held the phone to my ear. Hannah. Lily's voice was different, smaller. There was no sharp edge, no accusation. Can we talk? Just us. Without Mom. Those last 2 words changed everything. Without Mom. Lily had never wanted to talk to me without our mother mediating the space between us. In 35 years, she had never reached out to me independently. Something had shifted. I agreed to meet her the next day. We chose a coffee shop in Salem, halfway between Portland and Bend, neutral territory, neither sister's home ground. I drove with a knot in my stomach. I did not know what to expect. Our relationship had always been polite but shallow. Surface-level conversations about weather and holidays. Nothing real, nothing true. I could not imagine what Lily wanted to say to me that required a 3-hour round trip and no witnesses. The coffee shop was small and quiet. Exposed brick walls. The smell of fresh ground beans. I arrived first, ordered a black coffee, and took a table by the window where I could watch the door. When Lily walked in, I almost did not recognize her. My sister had always been polished, perfect hair, perfect makeup, the kind of woman who looked put together even at 7 in the morning. But the woman who walked through that door looked different. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore minimal makeup. There were dark circles under her eyes. This was not the confident, spotlight-seeking Lily I had grown up with. Something was wrong. She sat down across from me and ordered a latte. Her hands wrapped around the cup when it arrived, like she was cold despite the warm June weather. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick with years of unsaid things. Finally, Lily broke the silence. "Marcus is having an affair." I blinked. Of all the things I had expected her to say, this was not one of them. Her voice was flat, detached, like she was reading a news report about someone else's life. "Her name is Jessica. She works at his firm. They have been sleeping together for 8 months. I found the texts last month. He did not even try to hide them." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she did not let them fall. She took a breath and continued. "I moved out of the bedroom. We are still in the same house, but we are nothing. It is over. I just have not told anyone yet. I did not know what to say. I am sorry," I managed. "Does Mom know?" Lily's laugh was hollow, bitter. "Mom knows. Mom has known for weeks. She has been helping me manage it." She said the word manage like it tasted sour in her mouth. "But that is not the worst part," she said. She took a shaky breath. "I am in debt, Hannah. $32,000 on credit cards. I have been trying to keep up appearances. The clothes, the vacations, the birthday parties. Marcus makes good money, but not enough for the life I was pretending we had." I stared at my sister. The designer bags, the perfect Instagram photos, the elaborate dinner parties I had seen online. All of it had been a facade, funded by borrowed money. "Mom has been paying it off for me," Lily continued. Her voice cracked, little by little. She did not want anyone to know. She said it would destroy my reputation. She said I was too fragile to handle the consequences. Something cold settled in my chest. I finally understood something I had never seen clearly before. My mother had not been pouring love into Lily all those years. She had been pouring panic. She had been constantly managing Lily's disasters, paying debts, covering mistakes, protecting her from the consequences of her own choices. "That is why she was always so focused on you," I said slowly. "Not because she loved you more, because she was constantly putting out your fires." Lily flinched, but she did not argue. She just nodded, her eyes fixed on the untouched latte in her hands. She looked up at me. Her eyes were red but clear. "I always thought you were the lucky one, Hannah." I nearly choked on my coffee. "What?" "You were so together," she said. "You paid your own way through college. You built a career without anyone's help. You never needed Mom to fix things for you. You never needed anyone." Her voice wavered. "I used to lie awake at night wondering why I could not be more like you. Why I could not just handle things. Why I always needed rescuing." I sat with her words for a long moment. My entire life I had believed Lily was the favored one, the special one, the loved one. And all this time, Lily had been looking at me and seeing something she thought she could never become. 2 sisters, each believing the other had what they lacked, each invisible to themselves in completely different ways. "Do you know why I never needed anyone, Lily?" I asked softly. She shook her head. "Because I learned that asking did not work," I said. "So I stopped." The words landed between us like a stone in still water. I leaned forward. "I needed Mom, Lily. I needed her just as much as you did. The difference is, I learned to stop asking. Because every time I asked, she was already busy with you. Every time I needed something, your crisis was bigger. So I made myself small. I made myself quiet. I made myself someone who did not need anything." Lily's eyes widened. Something was shifting behind them, the beginning of understanding. "You were not the lucky one," I continued, "and neither was I. We were both hurt, just in different ways." We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, a car passed. Inside, the espresso machine hissed. The sounds of ordinary life continuing around our extraordinary conversation. "Why did you never say anything?" Lily asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. All those years. Why did you never tell us how you felt? It was a fair question. I had asked myself the same thing 1,000 times. Would anyone have listened? Lily opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. She looked away, out the window, at something I could not see. She did not answer, because we both knew the answer was no. For 35 years I could have screamed, and no one would have heard me over the noise of Lily's needs. Finally, she whispered, "No, probably not." It was not an apology, it was not absolution. But it was the first honest thing Lily had ever said to me. The conversation continued for another hour. We did not solve anything. We did not heal decades of distance in a single afternoon. But something shifted between us. Something small and fragile, like a seedling pushing through concrete. Lily talked about the divorce process. I talked about my new house. We compared notes on our mother's guilt trips. For the first time in our lives, we laughed together. Not politely, genuinely. When we stood to leave, Lily hesitated. Then she hugged me. A real hug. Tight and uncertain and longer than any hug we had shared since we were children. "I am sorry," she whispered against my shoulder. "I am sorry I did not see you." I drove home as the sun began to set. The mountains turned purple and gold in the fading light. I thought about everything Lily had revealed. The affair, the debt, the mother who was always rescuing instead of loving equally. The sister who had envied the very independence that was forged from neglect. Nothing was simple. Lily was not a villain. My mother was not a monster. They were all just people, shaped by wounds they did not choose, repeating patterns they could not see. But understanding was not the same as forgiveness. And as I pulled into my driveway, I wondered if my mother could ever understand what she had done, and whether I even needed her to. The answer came 2 weeks later, when she appeared on my doorstep unannounced. She came without warning, no call, no text, just a knock on my door on a Tuesday afternoon. And there she was. My mother, standing on the porch of a house she had never seen, looking like she had not slept in days. Her hair was uncombed, her clothes were wrinkled. She had always been meticulous about her appearance, the kind of woman who would not go to the grocery store without lipstick. But the woman standing on my porch looked 10 years older than she had at the confrontation. Something had broken inside her. She held a small overnight bag at her feet. Her eyes were red-rimmed and uncertain. "Can I come in?" Her voice was hoarse. Not a demand, not an accusation. Just a question, asked like a stranger requesting shelter from a storm. I stepped aside and let her enter. Whatever this was, I needed to see it through. My mother walked into the living room slowly, looking around like she had entered a museum. Her eyes moved across the bookshelves I had filled with my favorite novels, the photographs on the walls, pictures from hiking trips and book club gatherings, the view of the lake through the large windows. She took it all in, piece by piece, cataloging a life she knew nothing about. She did not speak, she just looked. At the kitchen with its herb garden on the windowsill, at the cozy reading nook by the fireplace where I spent my evenings, at the dock visible through the back door, stretching out over the still water. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "It is beautiful, Hannah. It is you. This whole place is you." It was the first time my mother had ever described something of mine as beautiful. The compliment landed like a stone in still water, creating ripples I could not predict. We sat in the living room. I took the armchair. She sat on the couch, her hands folded in her lap like a child called to the principal's office. The woman who had always commanded every room she entered now looked small and uncertain in my space. "I have not been sleeping," she said, "since you came to the house, since you asked me about your birthdays, and I could not remember." She stopped, swallowed. I could not remember a single one. She looked at her hands, unable to meet my eyes. "I went home that night, and I tried to remember," she continued. "I sat at the kitchen table for hours trying to pull up any memory of your birthdays. And I could not, Hannah. I could not remember one cake, One party, one gift I gave you." Her voice cracked, but I could remember every single detail of Lily's, every theme, every dress, every guest list. She looked up at me, her eyes swimming with tears. How is that possible? How could I do that to my own daughter and not even know I was doing it? She took a shaky breath. "I came here because I need to understand. I need to know what happened. I need to know what I did." I sat in silence for a long moment, considering my options. I could tell her the story myself. I could recount every forgotten birthday, every overlooked achievement, every moment of invisibility. But there was a better way, a more powerful way, a way that did not require me to relive every wound. I stood and walked to my bedroom. When I returned, I was carrying the wooden box Eleanor had given me. My father's letters. 30 years of his silent witness. I set the box on the coffee table between us. "Dad wrote these," I said quietly. "To me. Over the course of 15 years, he saw everything, Mom, everything you missed, and he wrote it down." My mother stared at the box like it might bite her. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. "Read them," I said. "All of them. I will be on the dock." I left her alone with my father's words. Some truths need to be discovered in private. I sat at the end of my dock with my feet dangling over the water. The afternoon sun was warm on my face. A family of ducks paddled by near the opposite shore. The world continued, indifferent to the earthquake happening in my living room. I did not know how long I sat there. An hour, maybe 2. I watched the shadows lengthen across the lake. I breathed the mountain air. I let myself simply exist. Occasionally, I heard sounds from inside the house. A sob, a muffled cry. The unmistakable sound of a woman reading her husband's indictment of her motherhood and finally seeing herself clearly. I expected to feel anxious, vindicated, maybe even satisfied. Instead, I felt strangely peaceful. Whatever happened next, the truth was finally being heard. Not from my mouth, but from my father's grave. He could not save me while he was alive, but he was saving me now. The sound of the back door opening made me turn. My mother stood on the porch, the box clutched against her chest. Her face was ravaged. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her eyes were swollen nearly shut from crying. She walked slowly down to the dock. Her steps were unsteady, like a person learning to walk after a long illness. She sat down next to me, close enough to touch, but not touching. We looked out at the water together. For a long time, neither of us spoke. We just sat, side by side, watching the light change on the lake. Finally, my mother's voice broke the silence. It was destroyed. Hollow. "He wrote about your graduation," she said. "The speech you gave. He said you talked about not waiting for permission to become who you are meant to be." She took a shuddering breath. "He said I was on my phone the entire time." She pressed her hand against her mouth, trying to hold back a sob. "I do not even remember what I was texting about. Probably something about Lily. And my daughter was giving the speech of her life, and I was not even listening." She could not continue. The sobs took over, shaking her whole body. "He saw everything, Hannah," she finally managed. "Your father saw everything I refused to see, and he loved you enough to write it all down so that someday you would know." She choked on the words. "Someday you would know that you were seen, even if it was not by me." She wiped her face with shaking hands. When she spoke again, her voice was hollow with recognition. "Your grandmother told you, did she not? About my mother, about Patricia." I nodded. "Eleanor told me." My mother closed her eyes. I swore I would never be like my mother. I swore I would never make one child feel less than another. I hated her for what she did to me. I hated Patricia for being the favorite. She opened her eyes, and they were filled with a grief that spanned decades. And then I did exactly the same thing. I became her. I became the thing I hated most. Her voice broke completely. I do not know how it happened. I did not mean for it to happen. But that does not matter, does it? The damage is done whether I meant it or not. I broke you the same way she broke me. And I did not even see it until my dead husband had to tell me. She turned to face me fully. The defensiveness was gone. The excuses were gone. There was only raw, terrible clarity. I see you now, Hannah, she whispered. I know it is too late. I know 35 years too late does not mean anything. But I see you. She took a breath. I see the girl who got a grocery store cake with no name. I see the teenager who ate lasagna alone on her 16th birthday. I see the valedictorian whose mother was texting during her speech. I see the woman who built this beautiful life without any help from me. The tears were streaming down her face now. And I am so sorry. Not sorry you felt that way. Not sorry if I hurt you. I am sorry for what I did. For what I failed to do. For every birthday I forgot. For every moment I chose Lily over you. We sat on the dock until the sun began to set. The sky turned orange, then pink, then purple. Neither of us moved to go inside. At some point, my mother's hand found mine. I did not pull away. I did not squeeze back either. I just let the touch exist. A fragile bridge over 35 years of distance. I did not know what happened next. I did not know if this moment changed everything or nothing. I did not know if forgiveness was possible, or even if I wanted to give it. But I knew one thing for certain. My mother finally saw me. After 35 years of invisibility, I had been witnessed. That night my mother slept in my guest room. And for the first time, I did not feel like a ghost in my own family. My mother slept in my guest room that night. When I woke the next morning, I found her sitting on my dock, watching the sunrise, a cup of coffee growing cold in her hands. I stood at the back door for a moment, watching her. She looked smaller in the morning light, diminished, but also somehow more real. The performance was gone. The woman sitting on that dock was not the mother I had grown up with. She was someone new, someone broken open. I made 2 fresh cups of coffee and walked out to join her. We sat side by side, just as we had the night before. The silence between us was different now, not heavy with unspoken accusations, just contemplative. 2 women figuring out what came next. My mother spoke without looking at me. I do not know how to do this. How to be your mother now. I have been doing it wrong for so long. Then we learn together, I said. But on different terms. She turned to look at me. Her eyes were still swollen from crying. What do you mean? I had been thinking about this all night. The words came out clear and steady. I will not be the helper anymore, Mom. Not the default one who cooks every holiday meal, cleans up, picks up Grandma, manages the logistics while everyone else relaxes. She nodded slowly, listening. I will not attend events where I am expected to be invisible. If I come to family gatherings, I come as a guest, not as staff. Another nod. I will not discuss Lily's problems unless Lily brings them to me herself. Her crises are not my responsibility. My mother flinched slightly at that one, but she did not argue. And I will not pretend everything is fine when it is not. If something bothers me, I will say so. And I expect you to listen without defending yourself. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded again. I understand. I do not like all of it. A ghost of a sad smile crossed her face. But I understand, and I will try. Trying is not enough, Mom. Doing is what matters. She met my eyes. Then I will do. We finished our coffee, watching the sun climb over the mountains. It was not forgiveness. It was not reconciliation. But it was a start. My mother left after breakfast. At the door, she hesitated. For a moment, I thought she might try to hug me, might push for more than I was ready to give. But she had learned something in the past 24 hours. She did not push. Thank you for letting me stay, she said. Thank you for showing me the letters. I know I do not deserve your patience. You do not, I agreed, but I am giving it anyway. That is my choice. I watched her car disappear down the road toward the highway. The house was quiet again. The lake was still. I stood on my porch, breathing the mountain air, and realized something had shifted. I did not feel victorious. I did not feel vindicated. I felt something quieter. The beginning of peace. Over the following weeks, Lily called regularly, not to ask for help, not to complain about Marcus, just to talk. The divorce was finalized in August. Lily moved out of the house she had shared with Marcus and into a small apartment across town. She did not ask our mother to pay the deposit. She used her own savings, what little remained after the debt was managed. I started seeing someone, Lily told me during one of our calls. A therapist. Her name is Dr. Reeves. We are working through a lot. The marriage, Mom, my spending, the way I have always needed someone to rescue me. There was something different in her voice, less desperate, less performative. She sounded for the first time like someone trying to build her own foundation rather than waiting for someone else to build it for her. In September, Lily drove to Bend to see my house. We spent a weekend together, hiking through the pine forests, cooking dinner in my kitchen, talking about nothing important. It was the first time in our lives we had been together without our mother mediating the space between us. On Sunday morning, before she left, Lily stood in my living room looking at the view of the lake. "I like who you are," she said quietly. "I am sorry it took me so long to see it." In October, my manager Marissa called me into her office. She was retiring at the end of the year. She wanted to recommend me for her position, Director of Logistics. A week later, I sat across from the Vice President of Operations. We discussed my vision for the department, my management style, my goals for the next 5 years. I spoke clearly, confidently, the way I had always spoken at work, the place where I had never been invisible. The VP smiled. "We would like to offer you the position, Hannah. You have earned it." That night, I did not call my mother. I did not text Lily for validation. I took myself out to dinner at the nicest restaurant in Bend. I ordered the steak, I ordered the dessert, I ordered a glass of champagne. Sitting alone at a table for one, I raised my glass to myself. To the woman who stopped waiting for permission. The champagne was cold and bright. The steak was perfect. I was not lonely. I was complete. The phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon in early November. It was the nursing home. Eleanor had passed away in her sleep that morning. Peacefully, no pain, just a quiet exit, the way she would have wanted. I sat on my dock for an hour after the call, crying for the woman who had never forgotten my birthday, the woman who had sent cards with specific details, the woman who had held the truth for decades, waiting for me to be ready to hear it. The funeral was small, a chapel with autumn flowers. A minister who spoke about Eleanor's sharp wit and kind heart. I delivered the eulogy. This time I wanted to. This time speaking was an honor, not a burden. "My grandmother saw me when no one else did," I said. "She was my witness before I had the language to ask for one." She held space for my pain and waited until I was strong enough to face it. I am who I am because she saw who I was. We buried Eleanor next to Walter, under a maple tree turning gold. I stayed after everyone else left, standing at the grave, saying goodbye to the woman who had saved me in ways she never fully knew. Thanksgiving came at the end of November. For the first time, I hosted. Lily arrived bearing a pie she had baked herself. Lopsided but earnest. My mother arrived when she was told to arrive, not early to help set up. She brought wine and sat in the living room like a guest. We ate together at my dining table, the table I had bought, in the house I owned, in the life I had built. The conversation was careful but genuine. No one talked about the past. We talked about the present, about Lily's new job at a nonprofit, about my mother's plan to start seeing a therapist herself, about my promotion. It was not the family I had grown up in. It was not the family I had dreamed of having. But it was real. It was honest. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged at the table. Not as a helper, but as a host. Not as invisible, but as seen. A week after Thanksgiving, my mother called. I answered, still slightly wary. "I just wanted to tell you something," she said. "I had my first therapy session yesterday. Dr. Hamlin, she is intense. She asked me about my mother, about Patricia." I cried for the entire hour. She paused. "I do not know if I can fix what I broke, Hannah. But I am trying. I am really trying." Something loosened in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet. But something adjacent to it. Something like hope. "I know, Mom. I am watching. Keep going." The first snow came in late November. I woke to a world transformed. The lake was frosted silver. The mountains were white. The trees held quiet weight on every branch. I made coffee and stood at my window, watching the snowfall. My house was warm. My life was full. Not with people demanding things from me, but with choices I had made for myself. It had been 6 months since I posted that photograph. 6 months since I stopped waiting to be seen. In that time, I had lost a grandmother, gained a sister, and begun to rebuild a mother. But the real test was coming. My 36th birthday. The first birthday since everything changed. I wondered if my mother would remember. I woke on my 36th birthday the same way I had woken on my 35th. Alone, in my own bed, reaching for my phone like a reflex. But everything else was different. 1 year ago, I woke in a Portland apartment, checked my phone hoping for a message that never came, and drove 3 hours north to buy a house in secret. Now I woke in that house. It was mine. It was home. The morning light filtered through curtains I had chosen myself, falling on furniture I had picked out piece by piece. Every corner of this room told a story of a woman who had stopped waiting for permission. I lay in bed for a moment, listening to the birds singing outside my window. I watched the light move slowly across the ceiling. I was not anxious. I was not desperate. I was simply present, at peace. I reached for my phone slowly, not with the desperate hope of a woman searching for proof that she mattered, with the calm curiosity of a woman who already knew her worth. Whatever was or was not there, I would be okay. I knew that now. The screen lit up. Several notifications appeared, but one stood out at the top, time-stamped 12:01 in the morning. 1 minute after midnight. The sender was Mom. My finger hovered over the notification. My heart beat a little faster, despite myself. After 35 years of forgotten birthdays, the body remembers its hopes even when the mind has made peace. I opened the message. "Happy birthday, Hannah." I set an alarm so I would not miss it. I have been thinking about what to write all week, and nothing seemed enough. So I will just say this. I see you. I have always loved you, but I did not always see you. I see you now. I am so proud of the woman you are. The woman you became despite me, not because of me. I love you. Mom, I read it twice, 3 times. The tears came, not the bitter tears of a woman still waiting to be seen. The quiet tears of one who finally had been. She remembered. She set an alarm. She stayed awake until midnight just to be the first one to wish me happy birthday. "You remembered," I whispered to the empty room. An hour later, while I was making coffee in my kitchen, my phone rang. Lily's face appeared on the screen. "Happy birthday, sis." Her voice was bright and genuine. No performance, no underlying agenda, just warmth. We talked for 20 minutes. She asked about my plans for the day. She mentioned she was planning to visit next month. Maybe we could go hiking together. She talked about her new job at the nonprofit, her therapy sessions, the small apartment she was learning to love. Then she hesitated. "I was thinking," she said, "maybe next year I could throw you a party. A real one, if you want. No pressure, just, I have never done that for you, and I would like to." I smiled. Let us see how this year goes first. But maybe. Yeah, maybe. We hung up with promises to talk soon. I stood in my kitchen, coffee warming my hands, marveling at how much could change in a single year. I took my coffee down to the dock and sat in the same spot where I had sat 1 year ago, posting the photograph that changed everything. The lake was calm. The mountains were green with late spring. The world was quiet and beautiful. In the afternoon, my book club friends stopped by with a cake. Homemade, slightly lopsided, absolutely perfect. They had written "Happy Birthday, Hannah" in purple frosting. My name on a cake. I took a photograph of it. Throughout the day, my phone buzzed with birthday wishes. Colleagues from work, Aunt Martha from my father's side, Cousin Jennifer, who had called me a queen when I bought the house, the community I had built, one connection at a time. I was not alone. I had never been as alone as I thought. I had just been looking for love in a place that could not give it. Now I had found it in places that could. As the sun began to set, I put on a dress I loved. Not for anyone else, just because it made me feel beautiful. I drove into town to the same restaurant where I had celebrated my promotion. The hostess recognized me. "The usual table by the window, Ms. Cooper?" I smiled and nodded. I had become a regular. I belonged somewhere. I ordered the steak. I ordered the dessert. I ordered a glass of champagne, the good kind. When the champagne arrived, I raised the glass. Not to anyone else, to myself, to 36, to the woman who stopped waiting, to the life I built when no one was watching. The champagne was cold and bright. The steak was perfect. The sunset through the window painted the world gold. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Back home after dinner, I sat at my desk. I took out a piece of paper and a pen. I wrote a letter to my father. I knew he would never read it, but I wrote it anyway. "Dear Dad, I turned 36 today," Mom remembered. She sent a message at midnight. She said she sees me now. I think she finally does. You would have been so happy. You would have cried, probably. You always cried at the good things. Thank you for the trust fund. Thank you for the letters. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. I used your gift to build a life, Dad. A good one, a peaceful one. You saved me. I hope you know that, wherever you are. I love you. I miss you. Hannah. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into the wooden box, alongside his letters to me. His voice, my response, a conversation across the divide. I walked down to the dock one last time. The stars were out. The lake was silver under the moonlight. The world was quiet. I thought about the woman I had been a year ago, the one who checked her phone with desperate hope, the one who had learned to shrink herself so small she became invisible, the one who believed she did not matter because no one had ever shown her that she did. That woman was gone, not forgotten. I carried her with compassion now, understanding that the girl who learned to be small was just trying to survive. But I was no longer surviving. I was living. I was taking up space. I was seen. By my mother, by my sister, by my community, and most importantly, by myself. I spent 35 years waiting for someone to give me permission to exist. I finally learned that the only permission I needed was my own. My mother's forgetting was never about my worth. It was about her wounds. Wounds passed down through generations. Wounds that were finally, painfully, beginning to heal. I did not know if I had fully forgiven my mother. Maybe forgiveness was not a single moment. Maybe it was a process, like healing, like growing, like learning to take up space. But I knew this. I was no longer waiting. I was no longer hoping to be seen. I saw myself. And that was enough. My mother forgot my birthday for 35 years. But this year she remembered. And even if she had not, I would still be here, whole, complete. And finally, irrevocably, my own. I stayed on the dock until the moon was high. Then I walked back to my house, locked the door behind me, and went to bed in the home I had built for myself. This is my story. The story of a woman who learned that she did not need anyone's permission to matter. The story of a daughter who waited 35 years to be seen, and then learned to see herself. If you have ever felt invisible in your own family, If you have ever wondered why loving yourself feels so hard when no one taught you how. If you have ever waited by the phone for a call that never came, I want you to know something. You matter. Even if no one told you, even if no one showed you, you are worth remembering. You are worth celebrating. And you do not need anyone's permission to start. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, I would love to hear yours. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever felt unseen? How did you find your way back to yourself? And if you have not already, subscribe to this channel. There are more stories like this coming. Stories about ordinary people finding extraordinary strength. I will see you in the next one. Until then, remember, you are not invisible. You never were. You just needed someone to remind you. Let this be that reminder. This story is fictionalized for dramatic effect.